So, why is communication so massively important in a relationship? Well, I look at communication as kind of like water. It's essential for survival in the sense that you need it frequently. It's an everyday process. You're constantly having to use your communication. And so if you're not able to, articulate what you're going through to your partner, then, very quickly that it's going to dry up. So, specifically, the high point of communications is the ability to communicate. What I've had in my relationship anyways is the ability to communicate feelings. So the beauty behind communicating feelings is that you're entitled to your own feelings. Like, no one can take it away from you. If you feel pissed or angry or sad or mad or frustrated or happy or joyful, any of those emotions, they're your emotions. You own them. No one else is entitled to them. You get to feel the way you want to. And the beauty behind that is whenever you're going through some hostilities with your partner, if you were to bring up your feelings and what you're going through, then they're less likely to become defensive. But the rule that we have in our relationship is that you have to keep the other person's actions out of your feelings. So if you're feeling a certain way, then their actions are not allowed to be in your feelings, because then you're not talking about your feelings, you're talking about their actions, which ultimately just leads to a blame culture. And, so in that cycle, it's a whirlpool. We've all been down that cycle where one person blames the other, and then the other person defends themselves and blames them, and then it just keeps going back and forth, and it just doesn't stop, right? Like that's what leads to divorces and breakups. So ultimately, in order to be able to talk about what you're going through, the communication is a key point. Being able to share your feelings. I feel frustrated. I mean, sometimes you can add in something, when you do this, I feel frustrated. But just keep in mind, you're right on the edge of blaming them. So it's by far, for me, it's way better for me to just focus on what I'm going through and how I'm feeling. And, if I'm really feeling these emotions, I'll lay it out. Like, if I'm pissed off, I'm pissed, and I'll lay all that out and say, hey, I'm pissed off, and kind of break down what I'm going through. The beauty behind that is it just allows the other person an opportunity to hear you out. And so at this point, it's up to them on whether or not they want to validate your feelings. Now, I come from the perspective that if a person is going through something, that any other rational person that would go through the same thing would probably feel the same way. So, if my wife is frustrated because whatever, I didn't do some chores or something like that, you put anybody else in that situation and they're going to feel pretty much the same way. So I'm a big advocate of just validating those feelings that she's going through right away and just getting that validation in. Now, if you want to take it a step further, I'll actually go through and apologize for anything that I've personally done that have stimulated those feelings, even though often those feelings are kind of a wound that's being reopened from from something prior. And that may or may not have anything to do with me. When you start digging into traumas, childhood traumas, past relationships, a lot of those wounds have already been created. And then we come along and do something real small that just reopens it. So sometimes those feelings may or may not reflect your actions, just fine. But, I like to take the extra step and just apologize for anything that I can. Hey, listen, I'm sorry I didn't put it away. I could understand that you feel frustrated. Anybody else that was in your same situation would feel the same way. So I like to apologize and validate. And she generally does the same thing with me. And what that allows us to do is just to be able to share what we're going through in that current moment. And our big breakthrough on communication is where, so we went through that. We learned how to talk about our feelings, communicate to each other what we're going through. But our big breakthroughs were when we were able to relate those specific feelings that we're feeling and relate those to a past trauma. Now, me, I'm not all there upstairs, right? So it's like I have a rough childhood that led a plethora of traumas, and that's probably my biggest one. But then I have the military, I have my time as a paramedic, So I have all these like different little things that will come along and all these little wounds, and she'll do something and it'll just rehatch it. And she's not doing anything maliciously. She's not intending to stimulate those feelings, but because I'm already on guard with those things from the pain in the past, hyper vigilant, so to speak, I'm already kind of have an eye out for those. My radar is already tuned in for those type of things. And so as soon as she makes them, I pounce on them, right? Like, oh, you did this. So for us, it's been like a real eye-opening experience to take whatever we're going through in that moment and say, okay, I'm feeling this pain, and your actions led to this pain, blah blah blah, but this pain really comes from back when I was blank, and we'll kind of open up there. And that's where, as for us as a couple, we've been able to really find empathy, because then we can kind of hear about how that person's gone through a hardship when they were young and kind of like innocent most of the time, didn't deserve to go through that hardship, and it kind of branded this little piece of pain and anger and hurt in them. And as a partner, a couple things, it takes the tension off of me. Like, I'm partially responsible for it because of some of my actions that I've done now, and I'll apologize, I'll own those actions 110%. But then at the same time, it's kind of like, well, a lot of that stuff comes from the childhood, and this person is just a hurt child that's still trying to resolve this pain. As a partner, it gives me an opportunity to be there for them and to help with that resolution. So honestly, until you can communicate your feelings and at least get your feelings out there and what you're going through without blaming a person, then none of that stuff can happen. You can't make it to those extra steps. So first step is really just communicating your feelings. Second step as a partner is learning how to validate another person's feelings. If you want to take it a third step, for me, I like to apologize for anything that I've done that may have stimulated those emotions. And then later on, when the dust is settled, it's nice to be able to kind of open up where the stimulus or where the original pain came from. So my 2 cents on communications for relationships, what's worked for us.